My father, a quiet man who built his life brick by brick, not with fancy words, but with honest work, passed away 6 months ago. The funeral was small, just family. My wife Sarah clung to me, a picture of perfect grief. She looked so beautiful, even crying. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have her by my side. I was wrong, so incredibly wrong. The day the will was read, she stopped crying. Her eyes, usually so soft and blue, hardened like chips of ice. My father, Liam Sr., left me everything. Not just money, but the old family farm. The one he spent his whole life restoring. The one I used to run around as a kid. It wasn't just a farm. It was our history. Our future. Or so I thought. The lawyer, Mr. Davies, cleared his throat. He was a stoic man. All sharp suits and no nonsense talk. He read out the clauses, the specific bequests. My father left Sarah a modest sum, a little more than a token really. Something to remember him by, he'd written. Then he got to the main part. To my son, Liam Miller Jr., I bequeath my entire estate, including but not limited to the property known as Miller's Ridge Farm, all its holdings, livestock, and any financial assets. Mr. Davies paused, adjusted his glasses, and looked at me. My heart swelled with a strange mix of sorrow and warmth. My dad always had my back. Sarah, who had been quiet until then, suddenly spoke up, her voice surprisingly loud in the small room. Wait, his entire estate? What about us? We're married. Doesn't that mean it's ours? Mr. Davies blinked, a tiny, almost imperceptible flicker of surprise in his calm eyes. He looked from Sarah to me. Mrs. Miller, under the terms of this will, the inheritance is specifically bequeathed to Liam Jr. Unless there is a separate agreement or a prenuptial agreement stating otherwise, this inheritance is his separate property. Sarah's face went white, then mottled with an angry red. Separate property? That's ridiculous. We're married. Everything is ours. He wouldn't have wanted that. He loved me. He wouldn't have wanted to leave me out. My stomach dropped. This wasn't the Sarah I knew. This wasn't the loving, supportive wife who'd cried with me just days ago. This was something else. Something cold and calculated. I tried to interject. Sarah, honey. My dad knew we were a team, but this farm, it's always been something special. He wanted me to have it. She spun on me, her blue eyes now truly glacial.
Special? What's so special about a rundown farm? It's land. It's money. And we need money. We're a family, Liam. This isn't just about you. This is about us, our future.
The air in the room felt thick, heavy with unspoken accusations. Mr. Davies, ever the professional, gently cleared his throat again. Mrs. Miller, I understand this may be upsetting, but legally the will is quite clear. Mr. Miller Sr.'s wishes are explicit. Explicit or not, it's unfair, she snapped. Liam, you are not going to let this happen, are you? You are not going to take it all for yourself. We have plans. A bigger house, a vacation, finally paying off our debts. This is our chance. Her voice was rising, laced with a venom I'd never heard. My father's lawyer just sat there, impassive, witnessing the unraveling of my world. I looked at Sarah, truly looked at her, and saw a stranger, the woman who promised to love me in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer. For richer, it seemed. She had a different definition. The shock of my father's death had dulled my senses. This raw display of greed, right there in front of the man who handled my father's life work, was like a slap across the face. It hurt more than any punch. It was the first crack in the foundation of my marriage, a crack that would soon turn into a chasm. I knew in that moment that everything had changed, and it wouldn't be for the better. The drive home was silent. Sarah stared out the window, her jaw tight, a muscle ticking in her cheek. I kept replaying her words, her tone, the sheer ferocity of her claim. Ours. It echoed in my head, a hollow, mocking sound. My father's will was a simple document, yet it had laid bare a truth about my wife I was too blind, or perhaps too naive, to see. This wasn't just about money. This was about trust. This was about who Sarah really was, underneath the charming smile and the comforting touch. She hadn't grieved my father, not truly. She had been calculating, waiting for this moment, waiting for the bounty. And now that it wasn't what she expected, she was ready for war. My father, even in death, had shown me something crucial. He had given me a gift, perhaps not the farm itself, but the clarity that came with it. The clarity of seeing Sarah's true colors, and it was a devastating sight. I pulled into our driveway, the familiar house, now feeling cold and unwelcoming. I knew the fight was just beginning, and I knew it would be ugly. The next morning, the silence in our house was suffocating. Sarah woke up earlier than me, which was unusual. I found her in the kitchen, nursing a mug of coffee, staring blankly at the wall. I tried to break the ice. "Morning, honey." She didn't even turn. Her voice was flat. "Morning." Look, about yesterday, it was a lot to take in. I tried to sound reasonable, conciliatory. My dad's will, it was a surprise for all of us. She finally looked at me, her eyes still hard. "A surprise?" "Liam, this isn't a surprise. This is a problem. A huge problem. Your father basically cut me out. After all these years. After everything I did for him, visiting him, bringing him food, listening to his stories. He didn't cut you out, Sarah. He left you something. And he left me the farm, which is what he always wanted." I tried to remind her of the sentiment, the history. He wanted the farm to stay in the family. With me. "Oh, so it's about sentiment now?" She scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her. "Liam, sentiment doesn't pay the bills. Sentiment doesn't get us out of debt. This farm, it's worth a fortune. We could sell it, start fresh. Buy a real house, not this cramped place. Travel. You always wanted to travel, remember?" She was already spending it in her head. The "we" sounded like her. "Sarah, that farm is my heritage. My dad spent 30 years bringing it back to life. He poured his soul into it. I can't just sell it." "Why not?" she challenged, her voice rising again. "'Cause your dad said so. He's gone, Liam. We're alive, and we deserve a comfortable life. A better life." That's when I knew I couldn't handle this on my own. I needed professional help. "I think I should talk to a lawyer," I said, my voice quiet but firm. Her eyes narrowed. "A lawyer? What for? To prove I am right? To prove this is our money?" "No, Sarah. To understand my rights. To understand what this all means." I didn't say to understand your rights too, but it was implied. I needed to understand the legal landscape, separate from her emotional demands. "Fine," she snapped. "Go talk to your fancy lawyer, but don't expect me to just sit here and let you take everything. We're married, Liam, and married means half." I left the house feeling heavy, my stomach churning. I called Mr. Davies' office, explaining I needed a private consultation. He fit me in that afternoon. Sitting across from him in his sterile office, the smell of old paper and leather in the air, I felt a strange sense of calm. He was a professional. He dealt with this every day. "So, Liam," he said, folding his hands on his desk. Your wife seems to have a strong opinion on marital property. Let's discuss. I laid it all out. My father's will, Sarah's reaction, her insistence that ours apply to everything. Is she right, Mr. Davies? Is it automatically ours? He leaned back in his chair. Liam, the law generally views inheritances as separate property, not marital property, unless specific actions are taken to commingle those funds. For example, if you were to deposit the inheritance into a joint bank account, or use it to pay off marital debt, or invest it jointly, then it could become commingled and potentially be considered marital property. So, if I keep it separate, it's mine? I asked, a flicker of hope. Precisely, he nodded. The farm, as a physical asset bequeathed solely to you, remains your separate property. Any income derived from it, if kept separate, also remains yours. However, and he paused, his gaze steady. This is where it gets complicated. Your wife's expectation, her perceived entitlement, can lead to significant marital disputes. If you do not agree to share, she could potentially pursue a divorce and attempt to argue for a share of your assets, including the inheritance, even though it's separate property. It would be an uphill battle for her regarding the inheritance specifically, but divorce itself is messy and expensive. Divorce? The word hung in the air, a chilling possibility I hadn't wanted to voice. It's a common outcome when one spouse feels unjustly excluded from a substantial financial windfall, Mr. Davies said matter-of-fact. Especially if the marriage has underlying financial strains or existing resentments. Has she always been this focused on money? I hesitated. Had she... Bits and pieces flashed through my mind. Her excitement when I got a bonus, her complaints about our current house, her constant talk of upgrading our lifestyle. I'd always dismissed it as ambition, a desire for a better life for us. Now I saw it differently. It was a hunger. I need to protect the farm, I told him, my voice firm. My father's legacy. It means too much. Then you must be very clear with your wife, and you must take steps to keep all inherited assets entirely separate, Mr. Davies advised. Do not transfer any part of the farm's ownership. Do not deposit any proceeds from the farm into joint accounts. Do not use any of the inherited money for joint expenses. This will be difficult, Liam. Your wife will likely view these actions as a declaration of war. He was right. I already felt the tension simmering. This wasn't just about legal definitions. This was about trust, about love, about the future I thought I had with Sarah. And it was all crumbling before my eyes. As I left Mr. Davies' office, the cold truth of the law settled in my gut. My father had given me a great gift, but it had come with an even greater price, the potential end of my marriage. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that war. The conversation with Mr. Davies echoed in my mind. Keep everything separate. Do not commingle. It felt so cold, so clinical to apply those rules to my own marriage. But then I thought of Sarah's face at the will reading. Her eyes, the sheer fury when she realized the farm wasn't automatically ours. It wasn't about love, not for her. It was about possession. I tried to recall our years together. Sarah and I met in college. She was bright, bubbly, always laughing. I was drawn to her energy. We dated for 5 years before getting married. Our wedding was beautiful, simple, just what we wanted. We promised forever. I remember holding her hand during the vows, feeling like the luckiest man alive. Looking back now, I saw hints, small cracks I'd ignored. Sarah was always a bit more focused on material things. When we first moved into our starter home, she constantly talked about upgrading, about the house we really wanted. I saw it as ambition, wanting the best for us. Now I wondered if it was just about wanting more. More. There was the time I got a small bonus at work. I suggested we save it for a rainy day. Sarah immediately proposed a weekend getaway, a new gadget for the house, or a designer purse she'd been eyeing. She always pushed to spend, to enjoy things immediately. I was the saver, the cautious one. We balanced each other out. Now, I realized the balance was more about her pushing me to be less cautious. After my father got sick, Sarah was initially supportive. She visited him in the hospital, brought him his favorite snacks. I genuinely believed she cared. But as his illness progressed, I noticed her questions shifted. Less about his comfort, more about his financial arrangements. "Has he updated his will, Liam?" she'd ask casually. "Is everything in order?" You know, for when the time comes, I'd brush it off, uncomfortable. It felt ghoulish to talk about money when my dad was fighting for his life. Now, it felt like a calculated inquiry. The day after my meeting with Mr. Davies, I tried to talk to Sarah again, more directly this time.
Sarah.
I spoke to Mr. Davies. He confirmed that the farm is legally my separate property. She slammed her coffee cup onto the counter, making me jump. "And you are just going to accept that? You are going to let your dead father control your life from the grave? You are going to keep everything from me, your wife?" "It's not about keeping it from you, Sarah. It's about respecting my father's wishes. He worked his entire life for that farm. It's a legacy."
A legacy of what?
"Dirt, animals. It's land, Liam. It's worth millions. And we're struggling. You think it's fair that I just get a few thousand and you get everything? While I am stuck here cooking your meals, doing your laundry, keeping this house clean." Her voice was getting shrill. "Sarah, you don't cook my meals or do my laundry. We share chores. We both work. This isn't about that," I protested, stunned by her sudden attack. She was twisting every...
Oh, really? Is that what you think? You think you contribute equally?
She scoffed. "I gave up my career for this marriage, Liam. I am here, making a home for us, supporting you. And this is how you repay me? By hoarding all that money?" That was a lie. Sarah had a part-time job she enjoyed, and we'd always agreed that we both wanted careers. She hadn't given up anything for me. This was pure manipulation. A low blow, a sharp pain pierced my chest. This wasn't just about money. This was about her rewriting our entire history, making herself out to be a victim, me the villain. "You didn't give up your career, Sarah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We both agreed on our paths." "Well, I am regretting it now," she shouted, tears finally spilling from her eyes, but they looked like tears of rage, not sorrow. "I regret marrying a man who would betray me like this. Who would put a piece of land above his own wife? What kind of husband are you?" Her words stung, tearing at the fabric of our relationship. I had always tried to be a good husband, a supportive partner. Hearing her call me a betrayer, knowing how much I had loved her, how much I had put her first, was a knife to the heart. It wasn't just the money. It was the complete lack of understanding, the assumption of malice on my part. She truly believed I was withholding something that was rightfully ours. I tried one last time to appeal to her sense of fairness, to her love. "Sarah, if we sold the farm, it would break my heart. It was my father's dream and mine. We could work it together, make it profitable. It could be for our future, a legacy for our children, if we ever have them." She laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Work a farm, Are you serious? I am not some country bumpkin, Liam. I am not going to spend my life mucking out stalls. I want a life of comfort, of ease, not dirt and animals. The vision I had of us building something together on the farm, of a future rooted in the land my father loved, shattered into 1,000 pieces. She didn't see a home, she saw an obstacle. She didn't see a legacy. She saw a cash cow. Her words confirmed my deepest fear. She wasn't my partner in this, she was my opponent. And she was ready to fight. The slow burn of betrayal had turned into a raging fire, consuming everything we had built. My heart ached, not just for the farm, but for the loss of the woman I thought I knew. The woman I had loved, and now I realized the woman I no longer recognized. The days following that brutal conversation felt like living in a minefield. Every word I uttered, every move I made, felt scrutinized by Sarah. She no longer spoke to me about anything other than the farm. Our usual light-hearted banter vanished. Our evenings were spent in tense silence, or worse, in heated arguments that went nowhere. Her tactics became more aggressive. She started involving our friends, subtly at first. At a casual dinner party, she'd drop hints about my newfound wealth, and how some people forget who they married when money comes along. Our friends, oblivious to the deeper conflict, would offer well-meaning but misguided advice. "Oh, Liam, you've got to treat Sarah. She's been so supportive." Or, "It's wonderful you have that farm, Liam. Imagine what you two could do with it. A joint venture." Sarah would smile sweetly, playing the part of the understanding wife, while I felt the pressure mounting. Then she started involving my own family. My Aunt Carol, my dad's sister, called me one day, her voice full of concern. "Liam," Sarah called me. "She sounds very upset. She says you are keeping your father's farm all to yourself, that you are not sharing with her. Is that true? Your father always believed in family." "He wouldn't want you two fighting over money." My heart sank. Sarah was manipulating my family against me. I tried to explain the situation, the legalities, my father's wishes, but it was hard. She had painted me as the selfish one, the greedy one. It was a vicious game. At home, the emotional manipulation escalated. She'd give me the silent treatment for days, walking past me as if I didn't exist. Then, she'd switch to tearful pleas, begging me to reconsider, claiming she couldn't live like this, that I was destroying her. "Liam, I am your wife, your partner. How can you do this to me? I thought we were a team. Don't you love me anymore?" The "don't you love me anymore" always hit hard. It was unfair, a twisting of my feelings. Of course I loved her, or at least I had. But this Sarah, this money-obsessed stranger, was slowly killing that love. The most painful part was her relentless attack on the farm itself. She called it a money pit, a useless plot of dirt, a drain on our resources. She openly scorned my father's legacy, something I held so dear. "Honestly, Liam, what are you going to do with it? Become a farmer? That's ridiculous. You are an accountant, not some hayseed. It's just a way for you to cling to the past, to your father's ghost, instead of living in the present with me." To hear her dismiss it so cruelly felt like she was spitting on his grave. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect. Respect for my father, respect for me, respect for our shared history, which she seemed determined to erase. One evening, I came home to find her on the phone speaking in hushed tones. When she saw me, she quickly hung up. "Who was that?" I asked. My suspicions piqued. She hesitated for a beat too long. "Just my sister, gossiping." I didn't believe her. The next day I noticed a stack of papers on her desk, half hidden under a magazine. I knew it was wrong to snoop, but my gut told me something was seriously off. I glanced at the top paper. It was a printout of an article. How to dispute a will in your favor. A cold dread washed over me. She wasn't just complaining. She was actively researching ways to take what was mine. My separate property. My father's legacy. This wasn't just a marital spat. This was a calculated attack. That night I confronted her. The article printout in my hand. "Sarah, what is this?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disappointment. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "How dare you go through my things? That's an invasion of my privacy, an invasion of your privacy. You are planning to sue me for my inheritance. You are planning to undermine my father's will." "It's my right," she shouted, grabbing the paper from my hand and tearing it in half. "It's my right as your wife. This is unfair, Liam. You can't just keep it all. We're married. It's ours." The word ours grated on my nerves. It was a weapon she wielded, a twisted version of what marriage was supposed to be. She truly believed she was entitled to half of everything, regardless of how it came to me. The love I once felt for her was being systematically eroded, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. The Sarah I married was gone, replaced by a woman consumed by greed. Tension in the house was no longer just palpable, it was suffocating. I knew then that there was no going back. The only way forward was through the legal system, and that meant drawing a hard line. The torn article on her desk was the final straw. It solidified my resolve. I had to protect my father's legacy, not just for him, but for myself. The man he believed me to be, the one who would honor his wishes. I couldn't let Sarah's greed destroy that. I called Mr. Davies again, explaining the escalating tension, the manipulation, the subtle threats, and finally the discovery of her research into disputing the will. He listened patiently. "Liam, it's clear your wife intends to pursue this aggressively," he said. "You must take a firm stance. You need to inform her, clearly and unequivocally, that you will not be sharing the inheritance, and that you will defend your separate property rights. This will likely trigger the next phase. Formal legal action." I swallowed hard. "So, divorce?" He paused. "Potentially. If she cannot get what she believes she's entitled to, she may pursue that route. Are you prepared for that?" I thought of Sarah, of our life together. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Or it had been now, it was just a battleground. "I have to be," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I can't live like this anymore, and I can't let her take the farm." Mr. Davies advised me to draft a letter, a formal statement of my position, which he would then review. It felt strange, writing a formal letter to my own wife, but the situation had become too toxic for informal conversation. That evening, I sat at my laptop, staring at the blank screen. How do you tell the person you married that you are drawing a line in the sand, that you are preparing for a fight? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Dear Sarah," I typed, then deleted it. Too formal, too distant. "Sarah," I tried again. Simple, direct. I wrote about my father's will, about his clear intentions. I reiterated that the farm and all related assets were my separate property. I stated unequivocally that I would not be transferring ownership or commingling funds. I explained that I wanted to preserve the farm, to honor my father's memory, and that I would defend its ownership. I tried to inject a note of sadness, of regret, for the path we were on, but her past actions made it hard to be truly empathetic. This was a statement of intent, not a plea for reconciliation. I sent the draft to Mr. Davies. He made a few adjustments, making it legally precise. removing any emotional fluff. He suggested I serve it to her formally, but I couldn't bring myself to do that yet. I decided to deliver it myself. I waited until she was home from her part-time job, sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling on her phone. My heart was pounding. "Sarah," I said, placing the letter on the table in front of her, "I think you need to read this." She looked up, saw the formal letterhead, and her eyes narrowed. She picked it up, her fingers trembling slightly, and began to read. As her eyes scanned the page, her face changed. The casual indifference melted away, replaced by shock, then fury. Her cheeks flushed a deep red. She threw the letter across the table. "You are divorcing me," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "No, Sarah. I am protecting my inheritance. My lawyer advised me to make my position clear, and that's what this letter does." "This is an ultimatum!" she screamed, pushing her chair back violently. "You are telling me you are choosing that stupid farm over me, over your wife, over our marriage. You are making me choose, Sarah," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "You are the one who started researching ways to dispute my father's will. You are the one who threatened to take what's mine. I am just responding to your actions. This is outrageous." She stood up, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. "After everything I've done for you, after all these years, you think you can just keep millions from me? It's not millions yet, Sarah. It's a farm. And it's my father's legacy. It was never ours in the way you mean it." Her eyes blazed. "You are despicable, Liam Miller. You are a selfish, heartless monster. I gave you my life and you are throwing it all away for dirt and cows." The words, sharp and venomous, cut deep. But this time they didn't break me. They solidified my resolve. I had drawn the hard line, and she was reacting exactly as Mr. Davies had predicted. There was no going back from this. "This is it then?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet now. "You are choosing the farm. You are choosing to live alone with your precious dirt." "I am choosing to honor my father's wishes, Sarah. And I am choosing not to live with constant demands and accusations. If that means we can't be together, then that's on you, not me." A moment of silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken finality. Then she let out a guttural cry of frustration and stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I stood there, the weight of my decision settling over me. It felt like I had just signed the death certificate of my marriage. The heartbreak was immense, a dull ache that spread through my entire chest. But beneath it, a tiny flicker of resolve remained. I had to see this through. For my father. For me. The legal battle was next. The very next morning, the metaphorical war truly began. I woke up to an empty bed. Sarah was gone. A note on the kitchen counter, scrawled in hurried, angry handwriting, simply said, "Don't bother looking for me. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." My stomach clenched. This was it. The official start. I immediately called Mr. Davies, informing him Sarah had left and threatened legal action. He wasn't surprised. It's a common tactic, Liam. To try and create a sense of abandonment, portray you as the one who drove her away. "Don't worry, we're prepared." Within a week I was served with divorce papers. The documents were thick, filled with legal jargon, but the gist was clear. Sarah was petitioning for divorce and demanding a significant share of my assets, including the farm. She alleged irreconcilable differences, but also, alarmingly, painted a picture of me as emotionally abusive, financially controlling, and generally unsupported. It was a complete fabrication, a malicious twisting of our reality. I sat with Mr. Davies as he went through the petition. "These are standard accusations in contested divorces, Liam," he explained calmly, though I could see the slight tightening around his eyes. "They're designed to put you on the defensive, to make you look bad to the court and to leverage a better settlement for her. We'll refute every single one. Reading her sworn declarations, my hands trembled. She claimed I had become obsessed with the inheritance, that I had stopped loving her, that I had financially isolated her. She even exaggerated her own contributions to our household, making it sound like she was a slave to my whims. It was a sickening betrayal. The woman I had loved, the woman I had shared my life with, was now actively trying to destroy my reputation and take everything from me. The legal process was a brutal education. Discovery requests poured in demanding every financial detail of my life, every bank statement, every tax return, every email, every text message.
Sarah's lawyer,
a notoriously aggressive attorney named Miss Harper, left no stone unturned. Our lives, once private, were now an open book to be dissected and judged. I had to provide evidence of my separate property, showing the source of the inheritance, proving I had not commingled funds. Mr. Davies guided me through collecting every document, every receipt, every piece of paper that proved the farm and its associated assets was solely derived from my father's will and remained separate. It was tedious, time-consuming, and emotionally draining. Sarah, through her lawyer, presented herself as the injured party, a dedicated wife whose husband had abandoned her and suddenly turned cold and greedy upon receiving an inheritance. She focused heavily on the unfairness of the will, trying to portray my father as somehow negligent or ill-informed for not considering her share. The nastiest part was the personal attacks. Sarah's lawyer tried to argue that my father had been suffering from a diminished mental capacity when he wrote his will, implying I had influenced him. This was a baseless, cruel accusation, and it infuriated me. My father was sharp as a tack until his last days, even if physically frail. Mr. Davies swiftly shut that down, presenting medical records and testimonies from doctors and friends that proved my father's lucidity. Every email from Miss Harper felt like a punch. Every meeting with Mr. Davies was a reminder of the chasm that had opened in my life. I was fighting for my father's legacy. Yes, but also for my dignity, for the truth. Sarah was painting me as a villain, and I felt utterly alone despite Mr. Davies' steady presence. Friends, the ones Sarah hadn't turned against me, offered support, but they couldn't truly understand the gut-wrenching feeling of being attacked by the person you swore to love. My family, the ones I managed to talk to before Sarah's narrative took hold, were confused and saddened. They just saw a marriage falling apart, not the calculated assault on my inheritance. The mediation session was a nightmare. Sarah and I sat in separate rooms, her lawyer and mine going back and forth, conveying offers and demands. Sarah, through her lawyer, demanded a lump sum payment, alimony, and half of the farm's appraised value. It was audacious, insulting. I refused. My position was simple. The farm was my separate property and I would not give it up. I offered a fair settlement based on our actual marital assets, excluding the inheritance and what was legally expected for spousal support, but it was far less than she demanded. Her response was cold and immediate. She finds your offer insulting. We will see you in court. As I left the mediation, the weight of the coming trial settled upon me. This was no longer just about money or a farm. It was about survival. It was about proving my truth in a system that thrives on conflict. The person I once shared a bed with was now my bitter enemy, weaponizing every aspect of our shared life against me. The heartbreak wasn't just about the money. It was about the complete and utter destruction of trust, of love, of the future I once envisioned. The discovery phase of the divorce was like digging through an old buried box. Every document, every financial record, every piece of communication was scrutinized. It was painful, humiliating at times, but it also started to reveal things I never knew about Sarah. The truth, as they say, eventually comes out. Mr. Davies' team, particularly his sharp junior associate, Mia, started noticing patterns. Sarah's bank statements showed unusual cash withdrawals, not just for regular expenses, but larger sums that couldn't be accounted for. There were also several small loans taken out in her name, which I knew nothing about.
Liam, Mia said one afternoon, her brow furrowed as she pointed at a bank statement.
Did you know about these loans and these cash withdrawals?
They don't seem to correlate with any known expenses.
Not even your joint household ones. I shook my head, a growing knot in my stomach. Number, I had no idea. We always talked about major financial decisions. These weren't discussed. Then came the credit card statements. One particular card, which I vaguely knew Sarah had but rarely used for our joint purchases, had a surprisingly high balance. And the charges were mostly from online gambling sites. My heart hammered in my chest. Gambling? Sarah? She'd always seemed so sensible, so against anything risky. This was a side of her I had never seen, or perhaps refused to see. The small cash withdrawals, the secret loans, it all started to make sense. She had a secret life, a financial burden she had been hiding. This wasn't just about her wanting the inheritance for a better life. It was about her needing it, desperately. She wasn't just greedy, she was in trouble. We found evidence of significant online gambling losses stretching back 2 years. It was staggering, easily tens of thousands of dollars. Enough to explain why she was so desperate for my inheritance, why she was willing to destroy our marriage for it. She wasn't just looking for a new house. She was trying to dig herself out of a very deep hole. And then there was the other discovery, the one that truly broke me. Among her deleted emails, recovered by a forensic expert hired by Mr. Davies, was a series of messages to a man I didn't know. The tone of the emails was intimate, flirtatious, and then increasingly anxious about money. One particular email, dated just a month before my father's death, stood out. He's getting weaker. The will reading should be soon. Fingers crossed for a big payout. We can finally be together, free of this mess. My vision blurred. A secret relationship, not just hidden debt and gambling, but infidelity. The phrase, free of this mess, echoed in my head. I was the mess. My marriage was the mess. My marriage was the mess. And she was planning to leave me, using my inheritance as her escape route to a new life with someone else. I felt a cold rage, a betrayal so profound. It knocked the wind out of me. The heartbreak was no longer a dull ache. It was a gaping wound. It wasn't just about money. It was about every lie, every false tear, every calculated smile. Her grief at my father's funeral, her clinging to me, her dramatic outbursts about our future. It was all an act. Performance to secure her share of what she believed was coming. She wasn't just my opponent in court. She was my betrayer in life. Liam, Mr. Davies said gently, seeing the shock on my face as he showed me the recovered emails. This changes things. This shows pre-existing financial distress and a clear motive for her pursuit of your inheritance. It also points to infidelity, which, while not always directly impactful on asset division in no-fault states, certainly affects spousal support claims and her credibility. I couldn't speak. My entire marriage, the years I had poured my love and trust into, had been a sham. She hadn't been planning a future with me. She had been planning an escape, using my family's legacy as her ticket. We have strong evidence now, Liam, Mia added, her voice quiet. Her case for getting a large portion of your inheritance, or even significant alimony, just crumbled. But the victory felt hollow, more than hollow. It felt like walking through the ruins of my own life. The farm, my father's legacy, seemed almost secondary now. The real loss was the utter annihilation of my belief in Sarah, in our shared past, in the truth of our love story. It was all a lie. A calculated, heartbreaking lie. The legal battle was brutal, but the emotional battle, the fight to reconcile this new, horrifying truth with the life I thought I had, was far more devastating. I had won the fight for the farm, perhaps. But I had lost so much more. Truth about Sarah's gambling and her secret relationship ripped through me like a physical blow. The rage was immediate, a hot fire in my veins. But soon after, a profound, crushing sadness took its place. It was like mourning the death of someone who was still alive, the death of a future that never truly existed. The legal proceedings became even more acrimonious. Once Mr. Davies presented the evidence of her secret debts, her gambling, and especially the emails, Sarah's lawyer, Miss Harper, changed tactics. The aggressive demands turned into desperate attempts at damage control. Sarah, realizing her game was up, stopped feigning innocence. Her mask slipped completely. In court during a deposition, I saw her across the room. Her eyes, which once held warmth, now held only resentment and fear. She looked smaller, almost pathetic. As her lawyer tried to explain away the gambling losses and dismiss the emails as harmless flirtation and stress-induced emotional outbursts. But the evidence was damning. The cost of this war, however, was immense. Financially, my savings were being eaten away by legal fees. Mr. Davies was good, but good lawyers were expensive. Every bill was a stark reminder of the wreckage of my marriage. I had to consider selling some investments, even a small piece of land I owned separately, just to keep up. It hurt, knowing this money could have been used to improve the farm, to honor my father. Instead, it was going to dismantle my life. Emotionally, I was a wreck. Sleep became a luxury. My nights were filled with replays of Sarah's lies, her cruel words, the shocking emails. My days were a blur of work, legal meetings, and the crushing weight of betrayal. I lost weight. My friends noticed the dark circles under my eyes. I felt isolated. The people who truly knew me were horrified by what Sarah was doing, but they couldn't truly help. They could only listen, offer platitudes. I pulled away from everything. My job suffered. My hobbies, the things that used to bring me joy, felt meaningless. The farm, once a source of comfort and purpose, now felt tainted by the ongoing battle. How could I build a future on it when it was steeped in so much bitterness and deceit? My father's memory, once a source of strength, now felt like a heavy burden. Had he known? Had he suspected? Was his specific will a subtle warning to me, a way to protect me from Sarah? The thought was a chilling one. My relationship with Sarah, of course, was beyond repair. We didn't speak directly, only through our lawyers. The anger I felt towards her was profound, but it was mixed with a deep sorrow. The woman I had loved, the life I had planned, it was all an illusion. She had built our marriage on a foundation of sand, and the first gust of wind, the inheritance, had brought it all crashing down. One day, I visited the farm. The old farmhouse stood strong, weathered, but proud. The field stretched out, green and vibrant. It was beautiful, just as my father had left it. But I couldn't see it as I once did. My father had poured his life into this place, and now it was the very thing that had exposed the rot in my own life. It was a victory, yes, but a costly one. I walked the fields, remembering my father, his calloused hands, his quiet wisdom. He'd always said, "A man's true wealth isn't in his pockets, Liam. but in his character. I wondered if he knew then that he was giving me a test. A test of my character against Sarah's lack of it. The legal process was designed to be impersonal, but it was anything but. It stripped away layers of my life, leaving me raw and exposed. Every interaction, every document, every email added to the immense emotional toll. I wasn't just fighting for money or land. I was fighting for my sanity, for my ability to trust again. The worst part was the feeling of being hollowed out. The love, the joy, the belief in partnership. It had all been replaced by a gnawing emptiness. The phrase heartbreaking didn't even begin to cover it. It was soul-crushing. I was winning the legal battle, but I felt like I was losing myself in the process. The cost of this war wasn't just financial. It was the cost of my innocence, my faith in others, and the quiet peace I once knew. It was the cost of a future that had shattered into irreparable pieces. I was ready for it to be over, no matter the final verdict. The day the judge delivered the final verdict felt strangely anticlimactic. After months of grueling legal battles, countless hours poring over documents, and endless emotional turmoil, it ended not with a bang, but with a quiet pronouncement in a sterile courtroom. Sarah and I sat at opposite ends of the room, flanked by our respective lawyers. She wouldn't even look at me. Her lawyer, Miss Harper, looked grim, her usual aggressive demeanor replaced by a resigned slump. Mr. Davies, on the other hand, had a subtle, satisfied nod as the judge began to speak. The judge, a stern-faced woman with tired eyes, summarized the case. She acknowledged the validity of my father's will, confirming that the Miller's Ridge farm and all associated assets were indeed my separate property, meticulously kept distinct from our marital funds. She cited the clear evidence presented by Mr. Davies, the specific wording of the will, the lack of commingling, and crucially, the overwhelming proof of Sarah's hidden gambling debts and her undisclosed relationship. Based on the evidence presented, the judge stated, her voice even and clear, the court finds that the inheritance of Mr. Liam Miller Jr. from his late father constitutes separate property and is not subject to equitable distribution as marital property. A small gasp escaped Sarah's lips. Her face crumpled. Miss Harper immediately put a hand on her arm. The judge continued, addressing the issue of spousal support. While spousal support is generally considered to ensure a spouse's transition to financial independence, the court has taken into consideration Miss Miller's undisclosed significant gambling debts, her demonstrable lack of transparency regarding marital finances, and evidence of a prior undisclosed relationship which presented a direct financial motive for her actions regarding the inheritance. She then ruled on a much smaller, time-limited spousal support payment than Sarah had demanded, just enough for a brief period of transition, acknowledging her part-time income and capacity for work. It was a fraction of what she had fought for. Finally, the judge ordered the divorce to be finalized, severing the legal ties between us. She hammered the gavel, a sharp, decisive sound that echoed in the quiet room. Case closed. It was over. I had won. The farm was safe. My father's legacy was protected. But there was no joy, no sense of triumph, only a profound emptiness. Sarah stood up abruptly, her face twisted in a mask of defeat and rage. She shot me one last look, a look of pure hatred, before being ushered out by Miss Harper. I watched her go and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just a blank space where emotions used to be. The heartbreak had been so absolute, so complete, that it had hollowed me out. Mr. Davies patted my shoulder. Congratulations, Liam. We did it. The farm is yours, clear and undisputed. Thank you, Mr. Davies, I managed to say, my voice hoarse. Thank you for everything." Mia gave me a small, sympathetic smile. She knew the victory was bittersweet. Leaving the courthouse, the bright sunlight felt almost offensive. The world was moving on, oblivious to the quiet devastation inside me. I was free of Sarah, free of the constant conflict, but I was also left with the wreckage of what my life had been. The trust was shattered beyond repair. The idea of a future with someone of true partnership felt like a cruel joke. I drove to the farm. I needed to see it, to feel its solidity, to reconnect with the one thing that had remained true throughout this ordeal. Walking through the fields, the familiar scent of earth and growing things filled my senses. The old farmhouse, standing tall against the horizon, seemed to exhale a sigh of relief. It was safe. But I wasn't. The victory felt like a defeat. I had protected the land, but I had lost a decade of my life, a decade of love. Even if that love had turned out to be based on a lie. The inheritance, once a symbol of my father's love and trust, was now tainted by Sarah's greed and betrayal. It was a constant reminder of the war I had fought, and the deep personal cost of that war. The heartbreak wasn't just about the past, it was about the future. How do you rebuild trust after such a devastating betrayal? How do you open your heart again when it's been shattered into so many pieces? The legal battle was over, but the personal healing was just beginning, and it felt like an insurmountable climb. The weight of the inheritance, now solely mine, felt heavier than any burden I had ever carried. The divorce was final. Sarah was out of my life, legally and physically. The house, once filled with her presence, was now quiet, almost echoing. The farm was mine, truly mine, with no dispute, but the silence and the victory felt cold. The first few weeks after the verdict were a blur of emptiness. I went through the motions, going to work, coming home to the silent house. The weight of what had happened, the betrayal, the lies, pressed down on me. I felt like a ghost, haunting my own life. Mr. Davies had been brilliant, securing my inheritance and protecting me from Sarah's exorbitant demands. But he couldn't heal the wounds she had inflicted. I knew I needed to start picking up the pieces, but I didn't know where to begin. I started small. I went to the farm more often, not to work it, but just to be there. I walked the fields, sat on the porch of the old farmhouse and just breathed. Gradually, the quiet strength of the land started to seep into me. The farm hadn't betrayed me. It was solid, real. It was a tangible connection to my father, to a simpler, more honest time. I thought about what my father truly wanted. He didn't just want me to have the farm. He wanted me to live, to thrive, to find purpose. He knew I loved the land, that it was in my blood. Selling it had never been an option, not for me. But I also wasn't a farmer. I was an accountant. One evening, staring out at the fields, an idea slowly started to form. What if the farm wasn't just about farming? What if it could be something more? My father had dedicated his life to restoring it. What if I could honor that, but in my own way? I started researching. Sustainable agriculture, farm-to-table initiatives, community-supported agriculture. These were things my father would have appreciated, adapting the old ways to the new world. I contacted a local agricultural college, seeking advice. I found a young, passionate farm manager, a woman named Emily, who had a vision for organic farming and community engagement. It was slow, painstaking work. There was so much to learn, so much to do. But for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of purpose. The farm wasn't just a place of legal victory. It was a potential new beginning. I decided to invest a portion of the inherited financial assets into setting up a state-of-the-art irrigation system, renovating the old barns, and bringing in new, healthy livestock. I was finally using the inheritance for its intended purpose, for the farm itself, making it vibrant again. It felt right. It felt like I was finally honoring my father, not just protecting his wishes, but bringing them to life. The house where Sarah and I lived still felt strange. I eventually decided to sell it. It held too many painful memories, too many echoes of what had been lost. I found a small, comfortable cottage closer to the farm. It was simple, but it felt like a fresh start, a place where I could truly build a new life, free from the shadows of the past. Healing was not a straight line. Some days, the pain of Sarah's betrayal would crash over me, a tidal wave of grief and anger. The images of her emails, the discovery of her gambling, still haunted my thoughts. Trust was the hardest thing to rebuild. I found myself guarded, cautious with new people, skeptical of sincerity. But there were good days too. Days spent working on the farm, feeling the sun on my skin, getting my hands dirty. Days talking with Emily about soil health and crop rotation. Her enthusiasm infectious. I started volunteering at a local animal shelter, something I'd always wanted to do. I reconnected with old friends who truly cared, the ones Sarah hadn't managed to turn against. The inheritance, once a catalyst for so much pain, was slowly transforming into a symbol of resilience. It wasn't just money or land. It was a chance to redefine my life, to choose purpose over bitterness. I learned that winning a legal battle doesn't mean winning back what was lost, but it does mean getting a chance to build something new from the ruins. My father's will hadn't just given me a farm, it had given me clarity. It showed me who Sarah truly was, and forced me to confront the uncomfortable truths about our marriage. It was a harsh, heartbreaking lesson, but it was also a liberation. I was still carrying the scars of that war, and I knew they might never fully fade, but I was no longer a ghost. I was rebuilding, brick by brick, just like my father did with his farm. And slowly, painstakingly, I was starting to believe in a future again. A future built on solid ground. A future that was truly mine.